had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving.
Hello, and welcome back to another question and answer episode of the Worth Loving Podcast. I'm your host, Keana W. Mitchell, and today we are talking about dating after divorce or a long-term relationship. So yesterday, our main episode, which airs on Wednesday, we talked about dating after divorce or a long-term relationship, and we talked about some of the ways to know that you're ready and some of the ways to know that you're not ready. We also talked about what psychologists thought and how we can have a higher sense of satisfaction if once we start to date again after a divorce or long-term relationship. So when we do these episodes, I absolutely love them because these episodes remind me that healing is not a straight line. It's not a checklist. Healing is a conversation. And every time we reflect on a real experience, a real fear, a hope, or a moment of transition, we are healing and moving in the right direction. Dating after a breakup is one of the most vulnerable seasons a person can walk through because you're stepping into something new while still carrying the lessons and sometimes the wounds of what came before. And the truth is, you don't have to navigate that alone. So today, we're going to talk about readiness, guilt, self-trust, fear of repeating old patterns, dating with kids, online dating safety, and what to do if you're not looking for anything serious yet. These questions are questions that people have asked that we all want to know, and they came from listeners just like you who are rebuilding, rediscovering, and learning to trust themselves again. So whether you're newly divorced, newly single, or just thinking about dating again after years with one person, this episode is for you. But before we get into your questions for the week, here is an ad from one of our sponsors. Before we dive back into today's conversation, I want to take a minute to personally invite you into something very special, into my You Are Worth Loving signature coaching program. This is my 12-week trauma-informed coaching experience designed to help you break unhealthy patterns, rebuild your self-worth, and create emotionally safe relationships that actually feel good for your soul. If you've been listening to the Worth Loving podcast and thinking, I'm ready for deeper support, this is your next step. Inside the program, we work together one-on-one to help you reconnect with your voice, your boundaries, and your confidence so you can stop settling for relationships that drain you and start choosing ones that honor you. I'm only taking 3 clients for the month of May because I honestly want to give each person the time, energy, and care they deserve. So, if you've been waiting for a sign to start your healing journey, this is it. Click the Stan Store link in the show notes to apply or learn more. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are worthy of love, and you are worthy of relationships that feel safe, healthy, and whole. Now, let's get back to today's episode. Now, let's get into those questions. Question number 1, how do I know if I'm truly ready to date again after divorce? Now, this is one of the most common questions I receive, and I actually answered this question last week, but we're going to answer it again. Now, I want to say this question absolutely makes sense because in our minds, there's like a timeline, like, okay, you wait 6 months, you're ready to date again. You wait a year, you're ready to date again. Wait 3 years and you're ready. But there's really no timeline to this. And actually, the best indicator that you're ready to date again is emotional readiness. That is the foundation of healthy dating. Readiness isn't about perfection, and that is so true. It's about emotional stability. It's about being grounded enough in yourself that you can enter a new connection without losing your center. Psychologists like Dr. James Wilson, who studied post-divorce adjustment, found that emotional readiness has less to do with time and more to do with the healing quality. So people who took the time to reflect, process, and rebuild were far more satisfied in their next relationships than those who rushed in. So you know how sometimes people, they just immediately start dating after they leave a relationship or after divorce. So when people do that, sometimes those relationships don't work out. Sometimes they find themselves repeating old patterns, and sometimes they make more wounds on top of the ones they already have. So, according to the psychologist, Dr. James Wilson, when people did the emotional work and they spent time working on themselves, connecting with themselves, becoming grounded, realizing who they are, what they want, their negotiables, their non negotiables, people who took the time to reflect and process and rebuild, they were far more successful with dating and more satisfied in their next relationship than those who rushed in. So, you're likely ready if you can talk about your past relationship without spiraling. You're not looking for someone to fix your loneliness. You're curious about connection and you're not pressured into connection. That's important. And you know your boundaries. So important. And you feel confident in honoring your boundaries. Because a lot of times we know our boundaries, but we're not really confident about honoring them. And when it comes to healthy relationships, not only do you need to know your boundaries, but you need to feel confident in honoring them. So, signs that you may not be ready to start dating again could be you're still emotionally entangled with your ex, you're dating to avoid being alone. And a lot of times people do this. They date to avoid being alone because they don't want to be alone. They're afraid they're going to never get married again or never be in a relationship again or never find love. So, when you are dating from a place of loneliness and desperation, you will, not saying all the time, but it's a high chance and possibility that you would pick someone who's not aligned with your values, your morals, or who you are. You'll just take the first person that comes along that shows you an interest. And just because someone shows you an interest, it doesn't mean that that is a real connection. That's important. Another sign that you may not be ready to date is if you feel dread or panic at the idea of dating. And guys, that's okay too. You don't have to be ready to date. There's nothing wrong with not being ready to date at this moment. You can date at any time. You have a whole life to live. You have all the time in the world. So you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to do it now. I have to do it then. I have to. No, you can just do it when you're ready. And here's the thing, even if you are not ready to date again, but you just want to experience different people, date, not date seriously, but just date because you want to date, that's okay too, because sometimes in order to know what we want and what we're looking for, we have to get out there and see. And especially if you've only been with one partner your whole life. So going to on multiple dates, getting to know multiple people, and dating not for a relationship, but you could be dating to practice. When you're ready to date, you can date to practice to see, okay, so would I like this in a relationship? Oh, this might be different. I can see myself liking that. It is okay to do that and to date around, especially when you're getting back out there with dating and everything. It doesn't have to be so serious at first. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm dating the final partner right now. It could be, oh, I'm dating, I feel like I'm ready to date, and I'm dating to see what it's like. I'm dating to see if I, to get comfortable with this, talking to other people, meeting different people. You can do that as well, and there is nothing wrong with it. Your body will tell you the truth. So if dating feels like a possibility and you're excited, then yes, you're moving in the right direction. If dating feels like dread or panic and you're like, oh, I just don't want to do this right now, that's okay too. That's your body letting you know, okay, you're just not ready to date right now. And then one day when you're ready, you can date at that time. But it's nothing wrong with waiting if you're not ready. And it's nothing wrong with going ahead and starting the dating process if you feel like you're ready. Okay, question 2. I feel guilty even thinking about dating again. Is that normal? Yes, 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 and yes. That is completely normal. So, guilt after divorce or a long term breakup or relationship is incredibly common. And psychologists call this loyalty guilt. Dr. David Anderson explains that after years with one person, your brain does form emotional habits. You're used to thinking about someone else's feelings, their needs, and expectations. So, when you start imagining a future without them or with someone new, your brain interprets that as quote unquote wrong, even when the relationship has ended. But here's the truth, dating again is not betrayal, it's rebuilding, it's choosing to live again. Guilt often comes from old roles you played in the relationship and internalized beliefs about what quote unquote moving on should look like, fear of judgment from others, or worried about how your ex or your children would feel. A helpful reframe for this, I say, would be you're not replacing anyone, you're expanding your life. And that's true because you can never replace the experience or the relationship you had with someone else. But it's important to remember that as we get older, and as we grow, we are not the same people we were when we were 20. So at 20, you might have been one person, and a certain type of relationship might have been good for you at that time. But as we grow and develop and evolve, we do become different people. And so, one way to look at dating again is that you're not replacing anyone, you're not replacing that relationship, you're just expanding your life to actually meet the person that you are now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're expanding your life, and you're expanding your life based on the person that you are now and not the person you were years ago. Here's a grounding exercise you could try. I would say try this exercise. I really like it because it is very helpful and it kind of brings you back to the present. So you could place your hand on your chest and say, I am allowed to heal. I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to love again. Guilt is a feeling, it's not a fact, and it will soften as you continue to honor your healing. Question number 3. How do I trust myself to choose differently this time? This is a powerful question. And to be honest, I think I get it almost every week. But I still ask it because I think it's important. And I know everyone who's listening today may not have heard this before. But this is a powerful question because it speaks to the heart of healing, rebuilding your self-trust. After a painful breakup, especially after years with someone, it's easy to question your judgment, especially if you've been with them for, let's say, 15 or 20 plus years. It would be easy to question your judgment. But self-trust isn't something you either have or don't have. It's a skill, and that's what I like about this. You don't have to have it. You don't have to be born with it. It's something that you can develop. It's a skill, and like any other skill, it can be rebuilt. Dr. Sarah Thompson's research on identity reconstruction show that people who spend time rediscovering themselves after divorce make healthier, more aligned choices in their next relationship. And that is so important. And I find that to be so amazing because when you take the time to get to know yourself and rediscover who you are, you will, by default, make healthier, more aligned choices in your next relationship. So it doesn't have to be something like, oh, I repeat these patterns and I'm always going to do it. Nope, that's not how that works. It works like you get to know yourself, you rediscover yourself, you rediscover your identity, you do hobbies and things you enjoy. And when you do those things, you are more likely to make healthier, more aligned choices with your next relationship because you are choosing from clarity and not from old wounds. So, here are some ways you can rebuild your self-trust. Number 1, reflect on your past relationship with compassion, not blame. Ask yourself these questions. What did you learn? What patterns do you want to break? Number 2, reconnect with your values. When you know what matters to you, you choose differently. Every time. You choose differently when you know what really matters to you and what you're looking for and what you want and what you don't want. Honor your boundaries. So every time you say no to something misaligned, you are strengthening your self-trust. You're letting yourself know, hey, I trust you again. I'm listening to my intuition. I hear you. I'm going to speak up. Every time you say no to something misaligned, you strengthen your self-trust. And I kind of like to think of self-trust as a muscle, right? So it's almost like when you go to the gym. When you first start, let's say you're doing weights, you might not be able to lift a lot of weights. But the more you do it, the healthier and stronger you become, and you can lift more weights. So the same way you can build muscle in a gym, you can absolutely build that self-trust muscle to help you strengthen the trust that you have in yourself. And then finally, I say move slowly. Self-trust begins and it grows in spaces between your choices. So don't rush into anything, move slowly. You don't have to be afraid of choosing wrong. You're not the same person you were before. You are choosing from wisdom now. And another thing I want to point out during this time of rebuilding your self trust, I want you to know that it's okay to give yourself permission to walk away. So let's say you accept a date and you got on a couple of dates with someone and you guys are trying to have a relationship. But then you start to notice some red flags, right? You have the right and permission to walk away. You don't have to stay. And I want to point out that sometimes we think we chose wrong, but it's not that we chose wrong. We made a decision with the information that we were given. So if someone is putting on their best behavior and they're not doing certain things, we're making a decision based on that. Sometimes we may not see red flags, or some people say I ignored red flags, right? But we have to say, where were we coming from? Did we realize that was a red flag? Because sometimes red flags don't come across as red flags. So once again, you made a decision based on what you knew and what you were presented. And sometimes what we're presented may not always be factual or true. But the great thing about this is that if you see that you're making this decision based off what you see, but then you later on you find out, ooh, I was wrong about that, or oh, well, I was not given the full picture. I didn't see the whole story. If you realize that this is not the person you thought you were talking to, or this is not the person you thought you were dating, you can walk away. You don't have to try to stay and make it work. And I think it's important because once you have self-worth and once you realize your boundaries and you honor them and you have your values and you know what matters to you and you know what you don't want, it will be easier to let yourself have that permission. Oh, okay, yeah, not what I want, not what I want, not what I'm looking for. You can absolutely walk away because you are choosing from a place of wisdom and not from a place of your emotions. Question number 4. What if I'm scared of repeating the same mistakes? This is a good question because fear is a natural part of healing. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from pain. But fear is not prophecy, it's just information. I think one of the most helpful frameworks in relationship psychology, it is called post-relationship learning. And this is very important, and I love it so much because it says that every relationship teaches you something. It teaches you something about your needs, your boundaries, your patterns, and your capacity for love. So you're scared because you're aware. And awareness is the first step toward change. I love this because when you are aware and you know yourself, then of course you are going to do things differently. So that fear you have is information and it's not a prophecy. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just telling you it's information. So here's a simple reflection tool you can use. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what happened? Number 2, what did I learn? Number 3, what will I do differently next time? This turns your fear into wisdom. And I want you to also remember that you're not entering the dating world the same version of yourself that you were before. You have grown, you have healed, you've reflected, and you're more emotionally intelligent now. So that makes a huge difference. A lot of times when we enter relationships, especially if we entered them when we were younger, we didn't have any type of reflection because we really didn't have an idea about what relationships were. We were going in based off of our fantasies and what we thought and our expectations. But now we are different. We are entering the dating world as a different version of ourselves. We have grown, we have healed, we have experienced what relationships are. We know what it takes to have a successful relationship. And we also know what our negotiables are and our non-negotiables are. And we're more emotionally intelligent now because of the experience and the life that we've lived. So this is very important to realize because mistakes aren't destiny, they're data, and you are allowed to choose differently. And I also want to point out, even though I say mistakes aren't destiny, I am very hesitant to say anything is a mistake because I feel like we make decisions based on the knowledge that we have. So if I make a decision based on the knowledge that I have and I make a decision that doesn't work out, it doesn't necessarily mean I made a mistake. It just means I made a decision based on the knowledge that I have. And when you know and understand that sometimes the knowledge that we have can come from our emotions and not facts, we can definitely make different decisions and choose differently. So I just want to point that out, okay? Question number 5. How do I date with kids involved? Love, love, love this question because when you are going into like a different relationship, especially after a divorce, a long-term relationship, kids are a possibility, right? A lot of us do have kids. So dating with kids does add a layer of complexity, but it's totally possible to navigate that with care and intention. Family psychologist Dr. Emily Wiggins found that children adjust best when parents move slowly, communicate honestly in age appropriate ways, keep early dating separate from parenting, and introduce new partners only when the relationship is stable. Here's what that looks like in real life. Don't introduce someone too early. Kids need stability, not revolving doors. Keep your dating life private at first, so you're allowed to have an adult life outside of parenting, but try to keep it private at first, your dating life. Be honest without oversharing. So you can say something like, oh, mommy's spending time with a friend. That is enough in the beginning. Check in with your kids emotionally. Their feelings matter, but they don't get to control your healing. Healthy dating models healthy relationships. So when your kids see you choosing well, setting boundaries, and honoring your worth, they will learn how to do the same thing. Question number 6. Is online dating safe for someone who hasn't dated in years? Okay, that's an amazing question. And to be honest, a lot of people do say that online dating can feel overwhelming, especially if you haven't dated in a long time. But it can also be a powerful tool when it's used intentionally. A 2024 Bumble report found that 68% of divorce users prefer apps that prioritize shared values and communication tools, which tells them, or which tells us, that people in your season of life are looking for meaningful connection and not chaos. And I find this to be amazing because it lets you know that instead of using dating apps as a way to find someone, I mean, we can do that too, but we can also use it as a tool in the type of individuals and people that we're looking for. So if you know that these are some of your values and this is how you prefer to communicate and these are some of your boundaries, if you would look on like a dating app that talks about shared values and things like that, you could see and swipe on people who have similar or shared values that you do, which can make the dating process a lot easier. And it could also have meaningful connections because you're looking for people with these values. And you're not just looking for anyone. Because even though there are people out there, we don't need to date everyone, right? Everyone is not for each person. We need to date people who align with our values and our communication, and people who are grounded, healthy people, so that we can have healthy relationships. And a lot of these times, some of these dating apps can let you see shared values, so you can make a decision about whether you like to reach out to them based on their values and not on superficial things. But here are some safety tips that you can also use when we're talking about online dating. A safety tip number 1 could be video chat before meeting in person. This can help you confirm identity and chemistry. Important so that you don't get catfished. Safety tip number 2, meet in public for the first few dates. Always remember, safety's first, always. Safety tip number 3, share your location with a trusted friend and let them know where you're going, who you're going to see, and let them see the picture of the person so that people will know where you are. And finally, safety tip number 4, trust your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is off, and go with that, okay? Online dating isn't about collecting matches. It's about connecting with people who align with your values. Move slowly, be intentional, and remember, you're in control of the pace. Question number 7, what if I don't want a serious relationship yet? I love it because you know what? You don't have to want a serious relationship right now. Healing doesn't follow a timeline, and you don't owe anyone a commitment you're not ready for. There's a difference between avoiding intimacy and intentionally pacing yourself. One is fear, the other is wisdom. If you're not ready for something serious, communicate that clearly and kindly. You're allowed to date casually. You're allowed to explore. You're allowed to enjoy connection without rushing into commitment. What matters most here is honesty with yourself and the people you date. This season is about rediscovery, so just let it unfold at your pace. So it is perfectly fine to date and not have a commitment or have a serious relationship. Dating after divorce or a long term relationship is not about replacing what you've lost. It's about discovering what's possible. You're not starting over, you're starting from wisdom. You're starting from clarity. You're starting from a deeper understanding of who you are, what you deserve, and what you want. Each question you ask today reflects courage, the courage to heal, the courage to grow, and to imagine a future that feels safe and aligned. I do want to encourage you to take your time, honor your boundaries, trust your gut, trust your intuition, trust your growth, and remember, you are worthy of love that feels steady, reciprocal, and emotionally stable. Thank you so much for joining me for this question and answer episode. If you have any more questions, please send them in. I love hearing from you, and until next time, I hope you have an amazing day and a wonderful weekend. Bye bye.
I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. I had to realize